Welcome to Sleep Workshop, where tonight we embark on a journey through the shadows of time to explore terrifying pre-flood civilizations, realms, whispered about in ancient texts and buried beneath waves or shifting sands, each one a testament to humanity's resilience and the ever-present specter of cataclysm. Somewhere beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a city of ivory and orichalcum slipped beneath the waves, leaving only whispers in its wake. In that sunken kingdom, civilizations soared to heights even the gods might envy, until hubris invited a deluge's final embrace. And even now, sonar pings and desert sands gently brush against stones that may once have formed marble avenues. Plato's dialogues paint Atlantis as an island realm larger than Asia Minor and Libya combined, ruled by a dynasty of demigods and artisans who channeled both geometry and divinity into every monument. Their harbors, carved from natural inlets and reinforced by walls of brass and gold, hosted fleets of warships and merchant vessels that plied distant seas, exchanging exotic timber, ivory, and precious metals for devices whose purpose is lost to history. The Atlanteans' mastery over agriculture permitted 3 harvests per year, thanks to irrigation canals that siphoned mountain streams and distributed water through terraced fields. Yet behind this veneer of perfection lay a society riven by ambition. Royal families expanded marble palaces to mirror the cosmos, while priests inscribed arcane seals that some scholars liken to ritual compendia rather than simple property markers. When Plato writes of earthquakes and floods that sundered the island in a single day and night, is he recounting myth or a collective memory of a forgotten cataclysm such as the Great Thera eruption, Santorini's ash layers, and tsunami deposits? In Cretan bays speak to a volcanic apocalypse around 1700 years before the Common Era, lending credence to the idea that ancient Mediterranean cultures conflated real disaster with moral allegory. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, divers have mapped submerged stone structures off the coast of Cuba grid-like formations of polygonal blocks that some enthusiasts claim echo Atlantean architecture. Geologists counter that these are the work of Ice Age processes fracturing limestone beds, yet the rhythmic regularity of the blocks continues to intrigue investigators. More recently, satellite imagery of Saharan sand seas reveals intermittent outlines of sprawling lake basins and straight channels, as if an evolved aqueduct network once threaded the desert. Could these be continental echoes of the legendary island's lost hydraulic marvels? Excavations at ancient Egyptian settlements refer to high-status amulets of orichalcum depending on translation, a copper alloy or meteorite, iron suggesting metallurgical innovation that might have spread via maritime routes connecting disparate Bronze Age cultures. Then there are Julia's lost city in the Atlantic, rumored by medieval navigators who spoke of mists parting to reveal sunken spires, and the Caribbean's Bimini Road, where parallel limestone slabs have tempted explorers to liken them to seaworthy causeways. Yet rigorous survey reveals these two to be natural beach rock features cemented by wave action. In every candidate location, a tension arises between the power of myth and the precision of science. Atlantis remains, perhaps not a single point on a map, but a palimpsest of human longing mirror, reflecting our aspirations for utopia and our fear of the flood that can wash creation away. Psychologists note that the myth persists because it resonates with archetypal themes: the rise and fall of civilization, the triumph of ingenuity, and the reckoning brought by nature's indifference. Carl Jung would see Atlantis as a symbol of the collective unconscious, a lost homeland of psychic integration whose fragments surface in our dreams and delusions. Modern mariners, equipped with autonomous submersibles and three-dimensional seafloor mapping, continue to scan ocean basins for anomalies that might betray hidden city walls. Meanwhile, anthropologists compile cross-cultural toponyms, place names in West Africa, South America, and Polynesia that translate to sunken town or land of the lost, suggesting that memory of a watery cataclysm may have been transmitted through migrations before written history. Linguists compare flood narratives from the Epic of Gilgamesh, the biblical Genesis, the Hindu Puranas, and Native American lore, tracing shared motifs of a divine warning, a chosen survivor, and the ruin of a sophisticated culture. When one reads Plato's account alongside these global deluges, one senses an undercurrent of universality that transcends geography. Perhaps Atlantis never was a physical empire, but an idea designed to remind humanity of its fragility, that technological sophistication can erode, that splendid monuments can disappear beneath shifting sands or rising seas, and that wisdom must be woven into our creations, lest they become monuments to our own undoing. As the ocean silently reclaims forgotten relics, and deserts guard their hidden basins, Atlantis drifts on the edge of possibility and myth, an invitation to explore not only the world beneath the waves, but the depths within ourselves. Legends speak of a landmass lost beneath the waves, its contours traced only in the echoes of forgotten chants. In the mists of the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, travelers whispered of sunken temples and cyclopean ruins glimpsed at low tide. And even today, gravity surveys and ancient folklore beckon us to question whether Lemuria was myth, memory, or a memory made manifest. In the late 19th century, naturalists puzzled over the mysterious distribution of lemur fossils, found in Madagascar and India but nowhere in between, inspiring geologists to posit a vanished continent bridging these shores. Hence the name Lemuria, or Mu, in occult lore, whose submerged ridges might lie hidden beneath turquoise shallows. Early promoters of the idea, such as Philip Sclater, hypothesized that a land bridge once linked Africa to Asia, explaining both biological oddities and the curious absence of certain species in intervening regions. Yet, in the same era, mystics and theosophists breathed life into this paleogeographic hypothesis, transforming it into a grand narrative of an antediluvian golden age. Helena Blavatsky, in her magnum opus, described Mu as a cradle of psychic development, inhabited by a race of giants who communicated telepathically and harnessed crystal energy to heal the land and commune with nature spirits. According to her accounts, these Muvians recorded their wisdom on sun-baked clay tablets, inscribed with symbols more akin to constellations than letter symbols, that she claimed journeyed through secret lineages of priest kings before disappearing beneath tidal cataclysms. James Churchward later elaborated on this vision in his volume The Lost Continent of Mu, recounting tales from a supposed Naga high priest who revealed that Mu was 12 million square miles in size and boasted cities with streets paved in orichalcum and gold. Churchward's narrative detailed vast highways flanked by statues of 40 feet and subterranean vaults housing the archives of Mu's 12 million inhabitants, along with designs for flying machines and maps of distant stars. Skeptics point out that no trace of Churchward's source manuscripts or Naga informants survives, and that his translations lack corroboration from linguists or archaeologists. By contrast, modern geology and plate tectonics dismiss any such continent as impossible. Ocean basins are formed by seafloor spreading and subduction zones, not by sudden submergence of entire landmasses. Yet the legend endures, not least because undersea explorers have reported anomalous sonar reflections off underwater plateaus like the Kerguelen Plateau south of Madagascar and the Nazareth Bank in the Indian Ocean features once coined submerged microcontinents, but now understood as fragments of continental crust. Enthusiasts argue that these bathymetric highs deserve targeted ROV expeditions to search for masonry or tool marks, while mainstream marine geologists attribute the reflections to basalt flows or ancient uplifted blocks. Drone surveys of Polynesian atolls occasionally reveal straight lineations in coral reef margins that resemble ancient coastlines, fueling speculation about remnant Muvians who built breakwaters or harbor walls along now vanished lagoons. Meanwhile, Pacific Islander oral traditions preserve flood myths of ancestral homelands inundated by the sea stories in Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia that share motifs of a divine warning, a chosen few escaping via giant outrigger canoes, and new settlements founded on volcanic slopes. Anthropologists consider these narratives as cultural memories of post-glacial sea level rise that submerged the Sunda and Sahul shelves, turning peninsulas into archipelagos and prompting human migrations across newly formed waters. Could these tales of lost isles have merged over millennia into the Mu myth cycle? In Madagascar, elders recount vanished kingdoms beyond the western horizon, where spirits walked beneath towering stone arches and scattered stone relics on Mozambique's coast hint at human-shaped blocks eroded by salt spray, tantalizing fragments of an unreachable past. Psychologists suggest that the Lemuria legend functions as a collective projection of existential anxiety, an archetype of paradise lost, reflecting our fear of environmental change and civilization's vulnerability to rising seas. Carl Jung might interpret Lemuria as an image from the collective unconscious, a symbol of integration and wholeness shattered by natural forces beyond human control. Linguists hunting for echoes of Mu in Austronesian languages note that some root words for sea, island, and old home exhibit shared phonemes across thousands of miles, hinting at prehistoric kinship networks that predate recorded history. Cultural geographers point out that ancient trade routes between China, India, and East Africa likely passed over now. Sunken reefs and sandbank sites where lost harbors may lie buried beneath layers of coral and silt. Sediment cores from the Somali Basin show a rapid mid-Holocene sea level rise around 6,000 years ago, submerging low-lying shores at a rate unprecedented in the previous 12,000 years, providing a plausible natural backdrop for widespread flood. Memories Even if no single mu ever existed, the idea persists as a palimpsest for collective longing, for a time when humanity lived in harmony with nature, guided by spiritual vision rather than steel and smoke. As deep-sea mapping becomes ever more precise, and as underwater archaeology pioneers new remote techniques, we stand at the threshold of possibly discovering submerged ruins, walls, foundations, or transport canals that may forever blur the line between legend and geology. Until that day arrives, Lemuria remains both cartographic phantom and psychic compass, reminding us that beneath the waves of history lie human stories as deep and shifting as the ocean itself. Beyond the north wind's domain, a land of eternal spring unfolded, bathed in sunlight that never waned. According to ancient bards, Hyperborea lay past Thracian wilds and Baltic mists, a paradise untouched by winter's frost, and even now, researchers debate whether classical references hint at real peoples who dwelt where no map dares to chart. In Homeric hymns and Pindar's odes, Hyperborea appears as a realm where Apollo spent his golden winters, flanked by white-haired priests who tended groves of mythical trees, drank ambrosial milk from winged cattle, and celebrated harvest festivals with songs that rang like crystals across sunlit plains. The earliest surviving mentions emerge in 6th century BCE Greek poetry. Yet Herodotus offers the fullest classical portrait, calling Hyperboreans the happiest of men who lived 1,000 years without dying and sent yearly offerings of sacred honeycomb, barley wine, and wax to Delphi, delivered by a single golden-winged snow placeholder. This ritual underlined a mysterious religious link between the far north and the Delphic oracle, suggesting that Hyperborean priests possessed esoteric knowledge that shaped Greek cult practices. Later, Platonic dialogues refer obliquely to a third continent beyond Europe and Libya, hinting at lost lands of excess sunshine, mild breezes, and silver-haired nomads who chanted prophecies in tones that locals could barely comprehend. Scholars debate whether Hyperborea was purely mythic or based on distant observations of Scythian tribes along the Volga or Finland's Arctic coasts, where summers yield barely 20 hours of twilight and winters shine with auroras. Some ancient geographers placed Hyperborea along the rippling northern shores of the Adriatic Sea, while others mapped it above the Scythian wilderness. Claudius Ptolemy's later world atlas relegates Hyperborea to a nebulous region between the known world and Oceanus, as if the ancients sensed a massive landmass drifting beyond human reckoning. Folk traditions from the frigid reaches of Siberia share curious echoes. Yakut shamans speak of a sunland where disease never visits, and Sami Joiks describe ancestral travels in dugout canoes toward golden fields that shimmer even when snow blankets the world. Anthropologists note these parallels, cautioning that collective memories of Ice Age, refugio periods, when humans survived glacial expanses in protected valleys, may have fused into the Hyperborea myth. Genetic studies of ancient Eurasian hunter-gatherers reveal migrations out of cryptic periglacial habitats, yet no archaeologist has yet uncovered a Hyperborean settlement defined by the festival arts or oracular sanctuaries of Greek lore. Instead, field surveys turn up Bronze Age encampments, early Iron Age totems topped with animal masks, and amber caches traded via Baltic routes, hinting at vibrant cultures unbound by Mediterranean norms, but lacking temples of gold and endless summer. Still, anecdotal accounts persist of mists rolling away to reveal burial mounds lined with carved megaliths, their symbols echoing those found at the Gerex Plateau in Hungary or the Stalif Cave meadows of northern Norway. Explorers in the 18th century, navigating the Arctic Circle, reported fleeting glimpses of verdant valleys ringed by low hills and lit by unearthly daytime glow, phenomenon now understood as atmospheric refraction and midnight sun effects, but often retold as eyewitness proof that Hyperborea slipped beyond thermometers and nautical charts. Cartographers of the Renaissance placed Hyperborea on speculative maps called Mappae Mundi, a vast bubble of terrestrial potential bridging the North Pole to known lands, complete with mythical cities named Arctiber and Arctonetymological, twins rooted in Greek for bear, reflecting the constellation Ursa Major that sails above northern skies. In some medieval bestiaries, Hyperborea's flora and fauna appear as fantastical footnotes: monkeys in mustachioed wreaths, dogs with emerald scales, birds with voices pitched to echo the lute. These creatures underscore the persistent human desire to populate blank spaces on maps with wonders beyond the ordinary. Renaissance humanists like Jean Bodin revived interest in lost lands, interpreting Hyperborea as an allegory for spiritual perfection rather than a physical territory. Enlightenment thinkers gradually dismissed such accounts as superstition. Yet, Romantic poets reimagined Hyperborea as an inner landscaper, poetic device channeling idealism and the sublime. In modern times, New Age authors cooped the myth to propose subterranean Hyperborean networks connected by underground rivers and magnetic ley lines, a reinterpretation as fanciful as any classical legend. Satellite geophysics now charts anomalies in Earth's gravitational field above Greenland and northern Canada, but these data reflect crustal variances, not hidden civilizational ruins. Still, occasional anomalies, iron oxide streaks, quartz veins, anomalous magnetism spark headlines promising proof of lost temples carved in frozen stone. Skeptical geologists attribute these readings to igneous intrusions or meteorite impacts. Yet the public enthusiasm reveals a collective longing for a golden age erased by time. Perhaps Hyperborea's most enduring gift is not a set of archaeological sites, but a reflection of humanity's quest for an untainted realm where art, science, and worship fused seamlessly. The myth encourages us to imagine societies that honored nature's cycles without exploitation, that cherished harmonious relation with celestial rhythms, and that embraced impermanence under the slow dance of polar light. As climate change redraws Arctic coastlines and melting permafrost reveals ancient peat bogs, we may find traces of prehistoric camps or wooden structures preserved in ice fragments of genuine cultural continuity across millennia. Yet, even the most tangible artifact, a tool blade or ceremonial bead, cannot recreate the living tapestry that once shimmered in legends of eternal spring. Hyperborea, then, stands at the crossroads of myth and memory, a symbol of lost harmony and a challenge to our contemporary world. Can we rediscover the balance we have forgotten? As we peer beyond known maps and beneath shifting ice, let the tale of Hyperborea guide us toward both humility and inspiration. Hidden among the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas lies a kingdom of crystal palaces and sapphire lakes, accessible only to those who journey with pure hearts and unwavering faith. In the secretive verses of the Kalachakra Tantra, Shambhala emerges as a bastion of spiritual wisdom, where enlightened sages guide humanity through cycles of darkness and renewal. And still today, pilgrims whisper of hidden passes and dreamt of valleys where the ancient teachings live on in silent meditation halls. Shambhala first entered Western awareness through Tibetan Buddhist teachings, described as a hidden land ruled by a reincarnating Kingta Kalki, avatar whose mission is to preserve Dharma until the world is ready to receive its light. According to the Kalachakra scriptures, the white island of Shambhala lies beyond a series of fortresses, each more remote and fearsome than the last, populated by guardians who safeguard sacred texts, sacred geometry, and the secrets of time's wheel. Medieval Muslim traders along the Silk Road told tales of a city cut from white stone, gilded temples reaching toward indigo skies, and scholars who meditated without sleep, their minds traversing the cosmic pattern of stars. In the 17th century, Jesuit missionaries in Mongolia recorded local oral lore of a land of the sun, where disease never entered and human lifespans extended beyond 100 years. These accounts reached Europe as tantalizing hints of a utopian realm, inspiring both explorers and esoteric writers to search beyond the Tibetan passes. Geographic evidence is scant. No valley in the Pamirs or Karakoram bears Shambhala's name, and modern cartographers place its coordinates among shifting glaciers and remote plateaus. Yet Tibetan lamas insist that Shambhala exists on a subtle dimension, accessible through advanced meditation and moral refinement rather than cartographic means. In 1937, explorer Alexandra David Neal claimed to have glimpsed a pristine valley of lemon groves and dovecotes in a remote northeastern region of Bhutan, account dismissed by official geographers but eagerly adopted by occult circles. Rumors circulated of a secret monastery, Lapis, where monks reportedly had mastered the art of healing any illness and decoding the language of the stars. More recently, Russian scholars sponsored aerial surveys of the Tibetan uplands using high-resolution satellite imagery, searching for rectilinear patterns or anomalous thermal readings that might betray underground caverns or terraced gardens. These missions yielded intriguing infrared hotspots near the ancient ruins of Guj and Saparang, but investigators concluded they were more likely geothermal vents or bioluminescent algae than signs of Shambhala. Skeptics point to the logical inconsistencies. How could a civilization maintain stone temples and written records in a climate so harsh without leaving any durable artifacts? Why do no ancient Chinese or Indian court annals directly depict this kingdom? Yet devotees counter that Shambhala's very purpose is to remain hidden until humanity's moral compass realigns. Its preservation depends on invisibility. Anthropologists note that the concept of a hidden spiritual realm appears in multiple cultures, from the biblical Eden concealed behind walls of fire to Celtic Tyr, Nog shrouded in mist, a universal archetype of paradise lost and awaiting rediscovery. Psychologists argue that Shambhala functions as a collective symbol of hope, an antidote to societal decay and the existential dread wrought by war and famine. Linguists studying ancient Tibetan manuscripts have uncovered genealogies of Kalki kings stretching back 21 generations, each name carrying a coded verse meant to guide seekers through inner transformation rather than geographic conquest. In Kalachakra, initiations held in Bodh Gaya and Ulaanbaatar, thousands of disciples partake in mandala ceremonies where sand paintings represent Shambhala's precise layout, a palace at the center, surrounded by 8 concentric walls, each wall flanked by guardian deities. Neuroscientists examining IG patterns of advanced meditation masters report altered brainwave states consistent with deep absorption, yet cannot verify any shift in spatial perception correlating to a journey to Shambhala. Contemporary virtual reality projects at Tibetan cultural institutes have recreated Shambhala's mandala architecture in digital form, allowing practitioners to walk through lotus-floored courtyards and gaze upon kaleidoscopic murals. While these simulations foster spiritual insight, they also underscore that Shambhala's promise lies less in physical ruins and more in experiential revelation. Environmental changes across the Tibetan plateau, melting glaciers, shifting ecosystems, permafrost thaw further complicate any future quest for hidden cities. Satellite-guided climatologists warn that rising temperatures may submerge cave temples or overrun high-altitude valleys with invasive species, erasing clues buried for centuries. Yet some Shambhala seekers view this vulnerability as a cosmic sign. The window for human stewardship of sacred knowledge narrows, urging urgent collective awakening. Whether Shambhala exists as a terrestrial enclave, a dimension of consciousness, or a mythic safeguard woven into Buddhist philosophy, its enduring allure testifies to humanity's yearning for sanctuary and transcendence. In the hush of dawn, prayer flags along Himalayan ridges, and in the silent turning of mandala wheels in desert stupas, Shambhala's message resonates that light persists in darkness, that wisdom survives apocalypse, and that paradise may be found not in distant lands but within the depths of compassionate mind. Beneath the crust of earth, a hidden realm of glowing caverns and subterranean rivers is said to stretch from pole to pole, offering refuge to enlightened beings beyond human sight. For centuries, explorers and occultists have recounted tunnels lined with crystal palaces, subterranean cities powered by geothermal springs, and libraries of ageless wisdom carved into basalt walls. And to this day, reports of vanished survey teams and mysteriously shifting magnetic anomalies fuel speculation that Agartha may lie just beyond the boundaries of known geology. The legend of Agartha first emerged in 19th century European esoteric circles, drawing on earlier myths of hollow earth and interior worlds. Alexander Saint-Yves d'Alvador described it as a benevolent kingdom governed by a wise king who maintained harmony between humanity and nature, while later writers like René Guénon and Louis Spence expanded the lore to include vast underground thoroughfares connecting remote mountain ranges and hidden polar entrances. If these tunnels exist, they would coincide with ancient myths of underworld realms, the Greek Hades, the Norse Svartalfheim, and the Tibetan Shambhala, said to nestle in hidden valleys. C.C. Horn and Marshall B. Gardner popularized the idea. In the early 20th century, through pseudoscientific treatises on Earth's hollow structure, claiming that seismic wave data and gravity readings could accommodate vast cavities within the planet. They pointed to localized negative gravity anomalies, famously near the Black Sea and parts of the Siberian permafrost as potential gateways to Agartha's underground highways. Later, during World War II, Nazi occult interests purportedly sought these passages to establish a hidden headquarters, and post-war military maps include unmarked zones in Antarctica and the Himalayas that some conspiracy theorists associate with secret entrances. Yet mainstream geology and seismology reject hollow Earth models, citing comprehensive tomographic imaging that reveals a dense mantle and outer core, leaving no room for cavernous kingdoms. Still, fringe researchers note that karst landscapes in regions like China's Yunnan and northern Mexico display labyrinthian cave systems extending for hundreds of kilometers, raising the question of whether larger networks might remain undiscovered. In the Andes, the Loricoca and Chinchacoca basins guard tunnel legends of pre-Inca traders navigating between rainforests and high plateaus. Local shamans speak of luminous beings guiding villagers through pitch-black passages to distant, fertile valleys. Geochemists have analyzed speleothem formations in these caves, dating them back several 100,000 years. And while no man-made structures appear, the sheer scale of some chambers rivals the descriptions of Agarthan palaces, with vaulted ceilings and crystalline chandeliers. Stories of telepathic communication echo in accounts from explorers like David Agaman and Dr. Raymond Bernard, who claimed that advanced subterranean dwellers could project images of geology and history directly into human minds, bridging the gap between physical and psychic realms. Anthropologists studying indigenous legends from the Pacific Northwest to the Australian outback find recurrent motifs of underground refugees, beings of light and knowledge who descended before the Great Flood and left talismanic artifacts behind. These artifacts include metal rings etched with unknown scripts, mysterious geometric tablets found in sealed cave caches, and cylindrical stones with inscriptions matching patterns in corn ear glyphs from Mesoamerica. Elongated skulls unearthed in Central Asia, some argue may belong to hybrid Agarthan emissaries, or represent a genetic lineage once widespread but later erased by surface cataclysms. Modern magnetometers, dropped into unexplored mine shafts, sometimes register inexplicable flux, leading some urban explorers to believe they indicate residual energy lines powering Agartha's inner cities. Meanwhile, NASA satellite data shows unusual thermal signatures in remote polar regions during solstice seasons, leading to speculation that geothermal vents could align with mythic Garden of Eden descriptions and the temple-like halls spoken of in occult manuscripts. Skeptics counter that these readings result from volcanic hotspots, ice fractures, and solar reflections, but the persistence of stories suggests a deep archetype in human consciousness. In the digital age, virtual reconstructions of a rumored architecture appear in online forums and 3D modeling communities, inspiring immersive VR experiences where users traverse golden corridors and metrical doorways inscribed with star maps. These recreations, though speculative, echo Carl Jung's notion that myths are psychic realities manifesting in symbols and archetypes. Environmental scientists warn that rising sea levels and melting permafrost could flood unknown cave entrances, erasing geological records that hint at vast hollow networks. As deep-sea submersibles probe oceanic trenches and deep drilling projects reach into the planet's crust for geothermal energy, the boundary between science and myth blurs. Whether Agartha exists as a hidden repository of ancestral wisdom or remains an enduring symbol of humanity's search for sanctuary, its legend invites us to imagine worlds beneath our feet, realms where darkness gives way to illuminated stone, and where the journey inward may reveal both our deepest fears and our greatest hopes. On a windswept plateau near Urfa, T-shaped pillars rise like ancient sentinels, each etched with beasts and symbols older than writing itself. Here, at the dawn of civilization, hunter-gatherers gathered to carve monolithic stones in concentric rings long before pyramids pierced desert horizons. And today, as archaeologists brush away millennia of sediment, Göbekli Tepe challenges every assumption we held about the Neolithic revolution. Situated atop a gentle hill in southeastern Anatolia, Göbekli Tepe dates back to roughly 9,600 years before the Common Era, placing it squarely in the pre-pottery Neolithic era when humans were only beginning to domesticate plants and animals. The site's striking feature is the series of circular enclosures defined by massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some reaching heights of nearly 6 meters and weighing upwards of 20 tons, each pillar carved with low relief depictions of foxes, boars, snakes, and abstract motifs that may represent celestial bodies or shamanic visions. Unlike later megalithic monuments, Göbekli Tepe contains no evidence of permanent dwellings or agricultural fields directly adjacent. Instead, feasting deposits animal bones from wild gazelle and aurochs, along with large quantities of flint. Blades indicate that people deliberately congregated here for ritual gatherings, bringing their prey from miles around. Excavations led by Klaus Schmidt in the 1998 decade revealed that the enclosures were built in layers, earlier rings superseded by larger ones, suggesting a community willing to dismantle one sacred space to erect another, each successive, complex, growing in scale and complexity. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal trapped beneath floor slabs confirms that construction began around 9,700 BCE, centuries before the wheel or even pottery appear in the archaeological record. Scholars once assumed that monumental architecture followed stable food production, yet Göbekli Tepe predates widespread cultivation of wheat and barley. Instead, it implies that collective religious expression may have driven sedentism rather than the other way around. Some anthropologists propose that shared ritual labor at sites like Göbekli Tepe fostered social cohesion, laying the groundwork for village life and agriculture. Others note that the effort required to quarry, transport, and dress the pillar stools fashioned from flint and bone reflects sophisticated organization, perhaps an early chiefdom or priestly hierarchy commanding seasonal labor pools. Iconography itself remains enigmatic. Do the animal carvings memorialize hunted species, serve as totemic guardians, or encode myths now lost to us? Recent studies using three-dimensional scanning and pigment analysis have detected traces of ochre, and other pigments applied to pillar surfaces, suggesting that the enclosures were once vividly painted, their interiors glowing with ritual. Light sources during ceremonies tied to solstices or equinoxes. Geophysical surveys have uncovered evidence of workshop areas where masons shaped pillars using stone hammers and middens that reveal feasting on local fauna and imported obsidian, implying trade networks stretching to Anatolian volcanic fields. Meanwhile, bioarchaeologists examining skeletal remains in nearby sites note markers of repetitive labor and dietary stress consistent with seasonal pilgrimage to Göbekli Tepe, perhaps an annual event uniting dispersed clans. The site's deliberate burial around 8,200 BC pillars laid face down and floors covered with earth adds another layer of mystery. Why seal this sacred place after centuries of use? Some interpret the infill as decommissioning, a ritual closing ceremony to protect the site's sanctity. Others argue that environmental changes or social upheaval forced abandonment, the act of burial preserving the memory of the sacred for future generations. Comparisons with global sites such as Stonehenge and Newgrange reveal parallels in astronomical orientation and ritual deposition. Yet, Göbekli Tepe stands alone in its extreme antiquity and monumental scale, as satellite imagery exposes alignments between enclosures and horizon markers. Archaeoastronomers propose that celestial events, Sirius or Orion's belt, may have dictated construction phases, linking human enterprise with the cosmic cycle. However, definitive proof remains elusive. No inscriptions accompany the reliefs, no written compendium survives. The absence of full excavations, only a fraction of the hill has been uncovered, means that vast chambers likely lie hidden beneath unturned earth. Conservation efforts now focus on stabilizing exposed pillars and building shelters to protect this fragile heritage site from weathering and looting. Turkish authorities and international teams collaborate to employ remote sensing, LiDAR, and ground-penetrating radar to map subsurface anomalies, while ethical debates swirl over allowing tourism to expand without endangering the stones. For now, Göbekli Tepe endures as a testament to collective imagination, a cathedral of stone predating civilization's well-worn path. It asks us to reconsider the origins of social order. Perhaps ritual and belief came first, and the urge to transform stones into symbols propelled humanity toward agriculture, settlement, and the cities that would follow. As we stand beneath those silent pillars, we feel the echo of thousands of ceremonies and the weight of questions, still unanswered questions, that remind us our own beginnings are not as straightforward as we once believed. Along the braided channels of the ancient Sarasvati and Indus rivers, spacious cities of baked brick streets and covered drains once flourished, their planned grids rivaling modern urban design. Here, craftsmen produced standardized weights, inscribed seals, and intricate beadwork in faience and carnelian, testifying to a sophisticated economy binding distant settlements into a single cultural network. And yet, as centuries passed, these marvels faded from memory. Their script remains undeciphered, and their final chapters lost to shifting floods and deserts. Emerging around 2,600 years before the Common Era, the Indus Valley civilization spread across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, encompassing at least 500 urban centers from Mehrgar in the west to Alamjurpur in the east. Its two greatest metropolises, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, were laid out in orthogonal grids bounded by citadels that towered above lower towns where artisans, traders, and farmers lived. Streets ran north-south and east-west, intersecting at right angles, a planning concept unseen in contemporary Mesopotamia or Egypt. Houses built of uniform fired brick modules featured private wells, bathrooms, and protosewer systems that discharged into covered drains lining the alleyways. Ingenious mosaic-like bricks created uniformity across vast distances, suggesting a centralized authority that enforced construction standards and regulated trade. Seals carved from steatite depict animals, unicorn-like creatures, rhinoceroses, elephant sand characters of an undeciphered script stamped on clay tags, leaving tantalizing hints of administrative record-keeping. Merchants sailed into the Persian Gulf to trade beads and metals for lapis lazuli, carnelian, and silver, while land routes carried goods eastward to the foothills of the Himalayas. Agricultural innovations, such as crop rotation of wheat, barley, and cotton, sustained dense populations estimated in the hundreds of thousands, while cisterns and reservoirs demonstrate advanced water management capable of withstanding monsoon fluctuations. Yet, despite these accomplishments, no palaces or temples have been identified, and there is no clear evidence of kings or theocracies. Instead, prosperity appears to have arisen from collective governance, perhaps managed by councils or merchant guilds whose records lie encoded in the silent seals. Around 1900 BCE, however, the civilization began to decline. Climate change, marked by weakening monsoons, likely reduced crop yields, while tectonic shifts altered river courses, diverting the Indus and rendering once fertile plains arid. Archaeological layers reveal gradual abandonment. Walls collapse, mud brick structures erode, and people migrate toward the Ganges basin where new cultures emerged. Looting and canal construction in the 20th century uncovered sarcophagi and pottery, but systematic excavation only began in the 1930s, revealing the stunning scale and sophistication of these cities. Attempts to read the script over 600 signs have yet to yield consensus. Some scholars propose a Dravidian language family, others an early Indo-European dialect, but without bilingual inscriptions, the seals remain mute. Genetic studies of human remains indicate a blend of local hunter-gatherers with migrants from the Iranian plateau, reflecting a long-term fusion of peoples drawn together by trade and agriculture. Analysis of isotopes in tooth enamel suggests individuals traveled hundreds of miles from their birthplaces to settle in Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, evidence of a highly mobile society. Recent remote sensing via satellite imagery has identified over 50 previously unknown sites, some with large mound clusters hinting at urban planning, and geophysical surveys have mapped buried streets beneath alluvial cover. Yet these methods cannot reveal social structures, belief systems, or the reasons for collapse. The absence of monumental temples or palaces implies religious practices may have focused on local deities, perhaps worshipped in simple shrines rather than grand edifices. Terracotta figurines, fire altars, and steatite animal figurines hint at animistic or fertility cults whose details remain obscure. In the 21st century, conservation efforts confront challenges as rising groundwater and salinity threaten the integrity of exposed brickwork. UNESCO's designation of the Indus Valley sites as World Heritage has increased funding for protective shelters and community-based preservation training. Collaborative projects now employ 3D imaging to record every brick face and seal impression, creating digital archives resistant to environmental decay. Meanwhile, scholars debate the legacy of the Indus Valley. Did its egalitarian urbanism inspire later Indian city traditions, or did its memory dissolve into folk tales remembered in the subcontinent's rural villages? Some contemporary planners study Mohenjo-Daro's grid for sustainable urban design, praising its mix of public sanitation and narrow alleyways that shade against heat. Others view the civilization's decline as a cautionary tale of environmental vulnerability and the need for adaptable water management in a changing climate. As the Arabian Sea laps at archaeological mounds near Karachi and monsoon floods submerge low-lying Punjab plains, the lessons of the Indus Valley gain renewed urgency. Sophisticated planning, communal governance, and resilience in the face of ecological shift, elements of a civilization that once defied expectations and now speaks across millennia in the silent geometry of its streets and the undeciphered script of its seals. Off the coast of Gujarat, sonar scans trace the ruins of an ancient city submerged beneath the Arabian Sea, its stone walls and street grids revealing an urban plan nearly 5 millennia old. According to Sanskrit epics, Dwarka was the fabled capital of Lord Krishna, sculpted from golden bricks and crowned by towering palaces, now claimed by marine archaeologists to rest under 20 feet of water. And as divers recover carved blocks and animal-headed sculptures, questions swirl over whether these remains belong to a mythic realm or to a forgotten chapter of South Asia's prehistoric past. Modern interest in the submerged city began in 1963 when marine geologist S.R. Rowe led an expedition that mapped regular rectangular structures and aligned stone blocks in the Gulf of Comet. Later surveys off Bet Dwarka uncovered fossilized wood beams, granite anchors, and what appear to be fortification walls laid in precise ashlar masonry. Radiocarbon dating of marine incrustations on carved limestone slabs suggests human carving as early as 2500 BCE. Contemporaneous with the later phases of the Indus Valley civilization. Scholars note that ancient port towns in the region, such as Lothal, managed maritime trade along well-defined harbor basins, and propose that rising sea levels at the end of the last glacial maximum inundated low-lying coastal settlements, preserving them beneath silt-laden waters. Meanwhile, textual sources like the Mahabharata and the Haravamsa describe Dwarka's 9 concentric moats, each flanked by ramparts inscribed with sacred mantras that glowed at midnight, suggesting an urban design integrating ritual and defense. These literary accounts correlate remarkably with the concentric rings of submerged walls, detected by sub-bottom profilers, clear reflections at regular intervals that hint at moated city planning. Yet their verification remains elusive without extensive excavation. Submersible explorations have produced high-resolution photographs of carved carvings depicting bulls, fish, and geometrical patterns reminiscent of Indus seals. leading to the hypothesis of cultural continuity or shared artisan guilds between the Indus heartland and west coast polities. Geochemical analyses of pottery sherds recovered by divers indicate kilns fired at temperatures above 900 degrees Celsius, a level of ceramic technology advanced for the period and suggestive of specialized craft production. Isotope readings on mudbrick inclusions also point to clay sourced from the mainland river plains, evidence of organized transport and resource management. Yet the site's preservation poses challenges. Monsoon-driven turbidity limits dive windows, and strong tidal currents hinder remote-operated vehicle operations. Coral and barnacle growth obscure architectural details, while seismic surveys risk damaging fragile submerged features. Government agencies have established a protected archaeological zone, but competing interests from oil exploration to coastal development threaten the integrity of the seabed ruins. Some historians caution that natural rock formations along the continental shelf may mimic man-made structures, a phenomenon observed in other submerged cities. Later debunked as geological processes like jointed basalt columns or wave-etched limestone platforms. Nonetheless, the pattern of rectangular foundations, linear alignments, and step-like terraces distinguishes the Dwarka anomalies from purely random features, warranting further study. Traditional fishermen in the region continue to haul up terracotta figurines and copper coins bearing Vanara-like warriors, creatures of legend, tied to Krishna's retinue, igniting local belief that their ancestors truly walked cobbled streets before the sea claimed them. Satellite imagery captures sudden shifts in coastline morphology and paleocanal traces that may mark ancient river outlets leading directly into the Gulf, supporting the idea that Dwarka once lay inland before tectonic subsidence and eustatic sea level rise converged to sink the settlement. Collaborative projects now bring together marine geologists, underwater archaeologists, and Vedic scholars who map ancient hymns, references to geographic markers, beaches of silver sand, caverns glowing with bioluminescent moss, and groves of coconut palms whose sapling clusters align with grid points, creating a multi-dimensional reconstruction in virtual reality. As climate change concerns spotlight past sea level fluctuations, the Dwarka site serves as both a cautionary tale of coastal vulnerability and a testament to ancient engineering adapted to dynamic shorelines. Whether the submerged ruins prove to be the literal remains of Krishna's golden city or vestiges of a Bronze Age harbor town with sophisticated nautical infrastructure, their discovery challenges our assumptions about prehistoric South Asian civilizations' maritime capabilities. In the swirling eddies of history and myth, Dwarka emerges as a liminal space where epic poetry meets sediment-filled water, where gods and mortals converge beneath the waves, and where every recovered block invites us to question how much of our collective past still lies hidden beneath the sea's silent embrace. Emerging from the foam and spray of the East China Sea, massive stone terraces kiss the retreating tide at Yonaguni Island's southern shore, their straight edges and right angles defying nature's random touch. First spotted by local divers in 1995, these submerged platforms, staircases, and pillar-like outcrops lie 20 to 30 feet below the surface, shaped as if by human hands and then reclaimed by ocean. And today, the debate rages on. Are these the remains of a prehistoric Japanese civilization lost to a global flood, or simply the sculpted handiwork of tectonic forces? Off the coast of Okinawa Prefecture, the Yonaguni monument consists of an interconnected series of sandstone formations that, at low tide and with careful lighting, reveal planar surfaces, vertical fault lines, and wedge-shaped steps remarkably similar to architectural features, terraces up to 20 meters long, sloping ramps, and even what appears to be a truncated pyramid or altar structure. Underwater photographs show parallel grooves that some researchers interpret as tool marks from chisels used by an unknown culture before the end of the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower and the surrounding Ryukyu archipelago formed a continuous landmass. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura, a leading advocate of the anthropogenic theory, points to sonar readings, seismic surveys, and underwater mapping that detect linear joints in the rock consistent with quarrying activity. Kimura has documented an array of monolithic blocks, sphinx-like heads, and corridor-like channels that he believes constitute a coherent city plan, possibly dating to as early as 12,000 years before the Common Era, well before any known Japanese civilization. Critics, however, argue that these formations arise naturally from the bedrock's sedimentary layering and subsequent jointing along tectonic fault lines. They note that sandstone in the region often fractures along straight edges, producing polygonal columns and flat platforms. Laboratory analyses of core samples reveal bedding planes inclined at consistent angles, suggesting that wave erosion and seismic uplift sculpted the blocks rather than human hands. Tectonic uplift events, driven by the Okinawa Trough's spreading, center and nearby subduction zones, could have repeatedly raised and lowered the seafloor over millennia, exposing these features to erosion and retreating currents that accentuated their angularity. Yet, occasional artifacts recovered by casual, diverse stone tools, pottery shards with incised patterns, and pebbles carved into abstract motifs hint at local human presence in the late Jomon period, roughly 5,000 years ago, raising the question of whether a small coastal community might have occupied and modified natural platforms for ceremonial or practical purposes. Ethnographies studying Ryukyuan folklore recount legends of sunken palaces beneath Okinawa's waves, where priest-kings once communed with sea spirits and paid tribute to dragon deities in coral sanctuaries. Some historians draw parallels to the Chinese legend of the Dragon King's underwater court at Pudao Peng, suggesting cross-cultural maritime myths of flood and sunken realms. Archaeological teams from Taiwan and Japan have proposed targeted excavations using remotely operated vehicles equipped with sub-bottom profilers to detect voids or buried cultural layers beneath the monument. But logistical challenges, currents, fragile reef ecosystems, and legal restrictions in marine protected areas have stalled comprehensive fieldwork. Meanwhile, geophysicists use high-resolution multi-beam sonar to create three-dimensional models of the formation, revealing a network of trenches and chambers that could be either natural fissures or ancient canals. Radiocarbon dating of coral growth on certain terraces suggests exposure to air around 8,000 years ago, coinciding with rapid post-glacial sea level rise, a timeline compatible with human habitation of a now sunken coastal zone. Cultural heritage advocates argue that whether natural or man-made, the Yonaguni monument holds immense value as a site of collective wonder, embodying the power of myth and the mystery of lost worlds. As deep-sea archaeology advances, future surveys combining environmental DNA sampling, sediment coring, and underwater LiDAR may yet distinguish tool-marked surfaces from erosional facets. For now, Yonaguni remains an alluring threshold between geology and archaeology, its terraces echoing with the tides of time and inviting us to question how much of our prehistoric past has been sunken beneath rising seas, and how much still waits to be revealed beneath the ocean's silent blue cloak. Just offshore from North Bimini Island, a linear assembly of limestone blocks lies submerged in shallow turquoise water, its straight lines and right angles challenging our understanding of natural reef formations. First documented by local fishermen in the 1960s and later popularized by underwater photographers in the 1990s, the Bimini Road presents itself as a deliberate causeway or seawall from a forgotten coastal culture. And still today, divers, geologists, and alternative historians debate whether these stones were placed by hands, now gone or sculpted by the relentless geometry of nature's currents. Lying at depths of roughly 8 to 10 feet, the formation spans nearly a quarter-mile, composed of tabular beach rock blocks averaging 2 to 3 feet thick and shaped into nearly perfect rectangles and parallelograms. Some blocks weigh upwards of a ton, their planar surfaces aligned in parallel rows that curve subtly to follow the contour of the submerged shelf. Proponents of an anthropogenic origin argue that the uniformity of block dimensions and the presence of what appear to be interlocking seams evoke megalithic architecture, perhaps the remnant of a road connecting Bimini's shallow lagoon to an offshore island now lost to rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. Marine archaeologist Dr. Eugene Shin has noted that the blocks regularly step down in height along these rows, as if accommodating tidal variation or watercraft draft, and that similar beach rock along the Bahama banks forms only in small, irregular patches rather than long, continuous ribbons. These observers suggest that ancient mariners, perhaps related to early Caribbean cultures or transoceanic voyagers, quarried and laid the beach rock to create protective breakwaters, causeways, or ceremonial platforms. Critics, however, attribute the formation to purely natural processes. As beach rock lithifies, it cements sand and shell fragments into horizontal layers that later fracture along vertical joints created by desiccation and subsurface reduction of iron compounds. Wave action and tidal currents then preferentially erode the softer matrix between joints, leaving behind tabular plates that lie flat on the sea floor. Experimental studies by coastal geomorphologists replicated similar linear patterns by observing modern beach rock outcrops in the Turks and Caicos, where no such myths of sunken roads exist. Yet even these researchers concede that the Bimini outcrop is strikingly uniform compared to typical reef beach rock, raising questions about local environmental variables such as salinity flux, freshwater springs, or microbial activity that might influence cementation and jointing patterns. Underwater videographers have captured footage of parallel striations on block surfaces that resemble tulle, mark straight grooves running along block edges, fueling speculation about human finishing touches. Geochemical analysis of block cement indicates a high concentration of calcium carbonate precipitated rapidly in lagunal conditions during the mid-Holocene, around 5,000 years ago, when sea levels stabilized after rapid post-glacial rise. This timeframe aligns with archaeological evidence of early archaic cultures in the southeastern United States and Caribbean islands, but predates established complex societies in the region. Occasional finds of stone pestles, carved bone implements, and shell ornaments near Bimini support the presence of human activity, though no settlement remains have been documented adjacent to the road. Folklore among Bahamian elders recounts tales of ancestral sea people who constructed pathways to ease canoe travel and ritual processions between islands. Stories that echo similar legends of causeways found in Malaysia's Pulau Langkawi or Florida's Lake Okeechobee stone ridges. The proximity of the Bimini Road to thermal vents beneath the seafloor has also drawn attention. Pockets of cold freshwater upwelling mix with saline currents, creating unique geochemical environments that could alter cementation rates and block cohesion. These vent zones, monitored by hydrographic surveys, exhibit slight negative gravity anomalies, a fact seized upon by hollow earth theorists who posit that waterborne entrances to subterranean realms lie nearby. Modern efforts to map the formation with multibeam sonar and side-scan imaging have produced detailed digital terrain models revealing slight undulations consistent with human-laid platforms rather than random beach rock collapse. Yet without direct excavation or sampling of block interfaces, definitive proof remains elusive. As sea level rise threatens to submerge Bimini's low-lying keys, interest in the road continues to draw divers, scholars, and treasure hunters alike. Conservationists warn that careless tourism can damage fragile marine habitats and accelerate block erosion, just as renewed drilling for freshwater aquifers risks disrupting cemented beach rock seams. In the end, the Bimini Road stands at the intersection of geology and mythology, a testament to how simple stone can evoke profound questions. Did ancient mariners engineer coastal defenses now lost to time, or does nature's force sculpt patterns so precise that the human mind insists on design? Whatever the answer, the limestone ribbons off Bimini's coast beckon us to consider our own legacies, what we build, what we leave beneath the waves, and what future generations will uncover in the silent embrace of the sea. Beneath the waters of the Southwest Pacific, nearly 5 million square kilometers of continental crust lie hidden, their edges drowned beneath the waves. Called Zelandia by geologists who first charted its submerged range in the late 20th century, this lost continent challenges our notions of what land truly means. And as seismic surveys and ocean drilling samples emerge, we confront the possibility that our maps have long omitted one of Earth's great landmasses. Zelandia stretches from New Caledonia in the north to Hikurangi Plateau off New Zealand's South Island, its highest peaks forming the islands of New Zealand and New Caledonia, while the rest remains submerged, an average of 1 to 2 kilometers below sea level. Its existence was hinted at by 19th century nautical charts marking shallow banks and raised continental shelf, but only with the advent of satellite gravity mapping and deep sea drilling did researchers confirm that these seafloor highs are not mere volcanic plateaus, but fragments of a coherent continental block rifted from Australia around 80 million years ago. Unlike Atlantis or Mu, Zelandia's fate is not mythic but geological. The breakup of Gondwana stretched and thinned crust, letting marine transgressions drown low-lying plains while leaving thicker cores emergent as islands. Magnetic anomalies surveyed in the South Tasman Sea and crustal thickness measurements along the Campbell Plateau revealed a continuous landform once hosting forests, river valleys, and ecosystems akin to those of modern Australia. Fossil pollen and plant fragments recovered from sediment cores drilled off the Chatham Rise hint at terrestrial flora dating to the Paleogene, implying that Zelandia supported rainforest-like environments before widespread subsidence submerged them. Some paleontologists posit that early vertebrate lineages, including primitive frogs and marsupials, dispersed across Zelandia's vanished land bridges, accounting for shared faunal affinities between New Zealand, New Caledonia, and Australia. The tuatara's kin and flightless wading birds may descend from these bygone ecosystems. Now relict populations clinging to emergent islands, geochemists analyzing zircon grains in sandstone fragments dredged from the Lord Howe Rise match them. 2 Australian source rocks, cementing the case for continental continuity. Meanwhile, marine geophysicists track transform faults and extensional rifts that mark Zelandia's boundaries, lines of weakness where the Coromandel and Lord Howe ridges buckle under tectonic stress. These structural features guide earthquake swarms and submarine landslides that reshape the drowned topography, even as corallogal communities colonize seamounts rising within reach of sunlight. Conservationists argue that recognizing Zelandia as a continent carries implications for biodiversity protection and indigenous heritage. Imbori traditions speak of Te Rua Mui, the fishing up of the North Island by the demigod Mui, a tale that may preserve an ancestral memory of coastlines now lost to rising seas. Similarly, the Canic cosmology of New Caledonia refers to a primordial land called Nengon, its stories woven into clan genealogies predating written records. Some climate scientists draw chilling parallels between Zelandia's drowning and modern sea level rise, noting that the oceans can swallow entire landscapes given sufficient time. They caution that low-lying Pacific atolls face a similar fate unless carbon emissions halt their upward trend, as drilling programs like International Ocean Discovery Program Expedition 371 return core samples that crack open chapters of Zelandia's ancient history. Pollen, diatoms, microfossils, isotopic signatures of past climates. We may yet reconstruct lost river systems, extinct mountain ranges, and vanished coral reefs that rival the biodiversity of Great Barrier environments. Zelandia's story reframes our planetary geography, reminding us that continents are not static fixtures but dynamic entities shaped by rifts, subsidence, and sea level oscillations. What we see as islands may be the ragged summits of sunken realms awaiting rediscovery. In that sense, Zelandia stands as both scientific marvel and poetic metaphor, a lesson in impermanence and adaptation, a testament to the thin line separating land and ocean, and an invitation to look beyond coastlines for the hidden chapters of Earth's deep past. On the sun-baked plains of southern Iberia, a wealthy port kingdom once glittered with silver ingots and amber trade goods. Its temples, dedicated to sun gods and river spirits, rivaling any Mediterranean palace. Classical authors spoke of Tartessos as a land of amber rivers and golden herds, where metalworkers forged swords of exceptional quality and sailors charted the pillars of Hercules under starlit skies. And yet, when Hecataeus and subsequent geographers tried to map its boundaries, they found only shifting sands, braided riverbeds, and the faintest echo of monumental walls buried beneath marshes. Tartessos emerges in the writings of Herodotus, Strabo, and Aristotle as a civilization whose wealth derived from rich silver and tin deposits in the Rio Tinto region, where ores gleamed red and yellow under the Iberian sun and attracted Phoenician traders as early as the 9th century BCE, establishing commercial enclaves at Cadiz and Gdor that funneled bullion inland to artisan centers. Modern excavations at sites like La Joya and El Carambolo have unearthed cache pits filled with refuse, gold collars, and votive axes inscribed in a script still undeciphered, suggesting a bureaucracy managing tribute and pilgrimage to sanctuaries. Overlooking the Guadalquivir estuary, where ritual offerings of olive oil and wine flowed into stone cisterns carved with iconography blending local river, deity imagery, and Eastern Mediterranean motifs. Scholars debate whether Tartessos was a single kingdom under a dynastic ruler, perhaps named Arganthonios, renowned for both longevity and generous hospitality too. Greek envoys, or a loose confederation of tribal polities sharing religious festivals, and metallurgical knowledge, excavations of megalithic tombs and circular enclosures known as tumuli revealed burial chambers stocked with amphorae from Rhodes, Corinth, and Etruria, hinting at diplomatic ties that extended across the sea. Geochemical analysis of silver artifacts indicates smelting techniques that removed lead and arsenic impurities to produce nearly pure ingots, an achievement paralleling later Roman refinements, while Iron Age pottery shards show kill temperatures reaching 900 degrees Celsius, a temperature level unattained elsewhere in pre-Roman Iberia, indicating advanced pyrotechnology. Yet despite these marvels, direct evidence of urban planning remains scant. Unpaved earthen roads give way to palimpsests of sedimentation, and seasonal flooding obliterates foundations, challenging remote sensing efforts. Satellite radar surveys have detected linear anomalies aligning with reported locations of the river. Tartessos, possibly the modern Guadalquivir, but meanders and delta shifts over 3 millennia obscure the ancient channel, leaving geomorphologists to reconstruct paleocanals from core samples that trace fluvial sands, riverine pollen, and crushed shell layers, marking tidal influence. Folklore among Andalusian villagers still recounts legends of sunken temples where bronze bells ring at dawn, and fishermen speak in hushed tones of submerged stone platforms off Mazagan, where tombstones carved with geometric patterns emerge. At extreme low tides, these accounts, though anecdotal, have inspired experimental dives and sonar mapping projects that yield promising echo signatures, rectangular depressions, and stone alignments, but conservation protocols and private property rights limit extensive excavation. Linguists, hunting for traces of the Tartessian language, analyze inscriptions on stelae such as the Carambolo treasure plaques, attempting to correlate sign pairs with Phoenician loanwords and indigenous Iberian roots, while some propose a non-Indo-European substrate. Others detect Celtic affinities, fueling theories of cultural syncretism long before Roman conquest. The collapse of Tartessos around 600 BCE remains enigmatic. Some attribute it to economic decline as silver mines depleted, others to catastrophic seismic events that altered drainage patterns, and still others to incursions by Carthaginian expansion under Hamilcar Barca, squeezing local polities into tributary status. Environmental reconstructions suggest a period of intensified aridity and soil salinization that could have undermined olive and grain production, depriving the elite classes of tribute and destabilizing social order. Palynological core from Laguna de Medina reveal a decline in Alia Europea, pollen concurrent with increased fire regimes, indicating agricultural stress. Yet scholarly consensus eludes a definitive cause, as each proposed factor, pressure, environmental degradation, resource exhaustion likely, played a role in a complex cascade. Today, multidisciplinary teams combine underwater archaeology in the Guadalquivir estuary, UAV-based LiDAR scanning of Hilford sites, and 3D photogrammetry of rock-cut sanctuaries to assemble a mosaic of human occupations spanning Neolithic to Roman phases, seeking continuity between prehistoric metallurgy and the iconic Tartessian culture immortalized by Greek tales. As coastal development and tourism threaten to erase burial mounds and ceremonial groves, local heritage initiatives collaborate with international researchers to digitize every artifact with laser scanning, preserving their textures and inscriptions. For virtual study, Tartessos, once veiled in poetic hyperbole, now stands at the crossroads of myth and archaeology. Its legacy, woven into the gemstones and silver veins that once fueled its prosperity, and into the rivers whose shifting courses may yet reveal lost wharves and temple foundations. In the gentle light of dusk along the Andalusian marshes, when the horizon softens into champagne hues, one senses the presence of a civilization that dazzled ancient minds and invites modern scholars to decipher its final riddle: how a society of sunlit opulence slipped into the mists of legend, leaving behind only fragments of gold, faint riverbanks, and the promise that beneath every layer of earth lies another chapter waiting to be told. On the coastal plains of Peru, 6,000 years ago, a city rose from desert sands without metal tools or pottery. Its pyramids and plazas, carved from earth by hands guided more by ceremony than by utilitarian need. Here at Caral Süpe, concentric platform mounds and sunken circular courts speak of communal gatherings beneath billowing reed awnings, where musicians played flutes and panpipes to honor deities of wind and wave. And though its contemporaries left no written language, Caral's monumental architecture and quipu-like textile fragments reveal a worldview as sophisticated as any script-owning civilization. Nestled in the fertile Süpe Valley some 24 kilometers from the Pacific shore, Caral functioned as the heart of the Norte Chico civilization, dating from roughly 2600 to 1800 BC, making it the oldest known urban center in the Americas. Its 6 major platform complexes, the largest rising nearly 50 feet, were built by moving millions of cubic meters of riverine alluvium, forming stepped pyramids whose terraces introduced orderly geometry to an otherwise rugged landscape. Between these mounds lay wide plazas ringed by sunken courts, each bearing evidence of pyrotechnic hearths for ritual burning of aromatic reeds and guava wood, while nearby quarries supplied rhyolite and basalt pillars erected upright as markers, or stelia practice, echoing the later Olmec and Maya traditions. Excavations have uncovered circular seating sections of white quartz pebbles, arranged in concentric benches that likely served as amphitheaters for elite ceremonies, while nearby subterranean galleries lead beneath platforms, possibly used for initiation rites or as acoustic chambers, amplifying flute music during solstice observations. Though Caral's builders crafted no ceramics, they wove complex textiles from cotton and llama fiber, fragments of which preserved in arid tombsdist play intricate knotting patterns that prefigure South American quipu for record-keeping. Stone weights engraved with standard marks suggest a shared measurement system, facilitating trade in cotton, fish, and gourds between coastal fishermen and inland agrarian communities cultivating squash, beans, and guava in terraces irrigated by canal networks still visible today. Musical instruments fashioned from cicada exoskeletons and flutes, carved from bird bones, reveal a sonic dimension to Caral's society, with archaeologists identifying an array of gyro-rasping tubes and shell trumpets, whose tones may have synchronized mass labor or invoked divine favor. Unlike Old World civilizations, Caral shows no sign of warfare, no defensive walls, no arrowheads in domestic layers, implying a social order maintained by ritual and consensus rather than coercion. Radiocarbon dating of charred reed matting beneath pyramid floors confirms ceremonial construction episodes tied to astronomical cycles, particularly the zenith passage of the sun and the rising of Orion's belt, suggesting celestial coordination across months and seasons. Marine isotopes in human bone collagen indicate a diet balanced between anchovy and sardines, sourced from upwelling currents and domesticated squash and beans, demonstrating sophisticated exploitation of both marine and terrestrial ecosystems. By 1800 BCE, Caral's monumental center fell into gradual disuse, whether due to climatic fluctuations, reducing river flow, resource depletion from overfishing, or socio-political fragmentation remains debated. Subsequent generations buried the pyramids in earth and built new shrines atop older platforms, preserving sacred geometry while adapting to shifting ritual imperatives. Rediscovered in the 1990s by Peruvian archaeologist Ruth Shady, Caral defied long-held assumptions that urbanism required metallurgy or writing, showing instead that complex society can emerge from cooperative feasting, shared beliefs, and symbolic architecture. Today, conservation efforts balance tourist access with protection of fragile reed mat foundations, employing raised walkways and 3D laser scanning to record every soil stratigraphy and fluted pillar. As rising sea levels threaten coastal hinterlands, an Andean glacier retreat alters river regimes. Caral stands as both a beacon of sustainable ancient practice and a warning. True resilience depends on harmonizing technology, whether reed boats or canals, with environmental rhythms. In the hush of dawn, when mist drifts across the Süpe Valley and the first light spills over terraced mounds, Carol's stones whisper of a society that wove community in earth itself, teaching us that civilization's roots may lie not in conquest and script, but in shared song, shared labor, and shared wonder before the sun's eternal dance. Ancient scribes tell of caravans setting out from Thebes to distant shores, drawn by tales of forests heavy with aromatic gums and hills rich in precious metals. The hieroglyphs declare, and on temple walls at Karnak and Deir el-Bahari we see carved reliefs of boats, carved from ox hides gliding beneath palm-thatched dwellings, their holds heaped with baskets of frankincense, sacks of myrrh, carved tusks of ivory, and bundles of ebony logs. The earliest records date to the reign of King Sahir, when cedar ships navigated the western arm of the Great Sea to trade for incense that appeased the gods. Yet it was Queen Hatshepsut whose expedition became the stuff of legend, dispatching her fleet into seasonal winds to bring back bundles of aromatic resin and live monkeys as living proof of Punt's wonder. These reliefs depict delegation after delegation of dark-skinned dignitaries bearing sapling offers and live trade goods, while stilted villages rise on thin piles above tidal flats, suggesting a kingdom both connected to the river and to the sea. Modern chemical analysis of residues in ceremonial chalices reveals the exact match of resin compounds from comifera trees still growing on rocky hillsides across the strait, and geologists trace mineral grains in stone anchors to ancient quarries along the rugged coastline where traders once set foot. Yet other scholars argue that the land reached by Egyptian ships lay across the sea, in the foothills of distant mountain ranges, where monsoon rains nourished groves of resinous trees that yield the world's finest incense. Linguists examine the terms inscribed in stonewords for resin and for divine land and compare them to early Afro-Asiatic dialects, uncovering shared root words that suggest merchants and priests exchanged more than goods. They exchanged language, ritual practices, and navigational lore passed down through generations. Beyond trade, the relationship with Punt shaped foreign policy and theology. Egyptian shipwrights adapted their designs for monsoon currents, using sawnplank hulls and wind-catching sails, while Puntite craftsmen introduced new rope-making techniques and ceremonial mask traditions that echoed in festival rites along the Nile. Tomb inscriptions mention Puntite women married into royal households, bringing with them exotic crafts and botanical knowledge that influenced palace gardens and medicinal lore. Yet, despite these rich connections, no Puntite city walls or tombs have emerged from the sands or the shallows, leaving only submerged legends and shifting dunes to guard the secret of its precise location. Underwater archaeologists deploy remote vehicles to survey reefs and shoals where sonar pings trace linear formations mirroring ancient keys. But strong currents and coral overgrowth obscure every promising lead. Geomorphologists study cores drilled from seabed sediments, identifying layers of riverine sands and pollen that predate known coastal settlements, suggesting that shorelines once extended farther to meet Egyptian ships. Meanwhile, researchers map ancient river courses now hidden beneath tidal flats, looking for clues in buried paleocanals where Puntite communities may have thrived on agriculture as well as trade. Oral traditions among coastal peoples speak of secret valleys hidden by shifting dunes, of hidden wells fed by subterranean springs where incense trees still stand, and of ancestral songs that honor exchange voyages undertaken long before the rise of great empires. These stories resonate with flood myths found across continents, hinting at catastrophic sea level rises that submerged low-lying ports and erased entire chapters of history. Anthropologists piece together these narratives with archaeological fragments, ceramic sherds stamped with foreign motifs, crude metal tools fashioned from imported ores, and carved ivory items fashioned in styles that blend local and northern traditions, revealing a tapestry of interaction that defies simple categorization. As satellite imagery improves, the search widens. Paleocanal outlines emerge under shifting sand, and spectral analysis highlights buried ridges that may mark ancient harbors. At the same time, historians scour papyrus fragments for overlooked mentions of puntite gifts or navigational details, hoping that forgotten logbooks might preserve geographic coordinates now lost to millennia. Geneticists analyze DNA from mummified hair samples, identifying exotic haplogroups that trace two populations south and east of the Red Sea, confirming that puntite envoys once mingled with the people of the Nile Valley. Environmental scientists reconstruct ancient climates from pollen core and isotopic data, revealing an era when coastal woodlands thrived and rivers carved fertile deltas, only to recede under shifting monsoon patterns and rising seas, cycle that may have driven Punt's inhabitants to abandon shoreline settlements long before written records ceased. Yet each new discovery brings fresh mysteries. Stone anchors unearthed in silt suggest larger ships than previously believed, while fragmentary inscriptions hint at a puntite script that remains undeciphered. Underwater LiDAR technology teases out hidden masonry blocks on submerged ledges, but without excavation, their human origin cannot be confirmed. Conservationists warn that coastal development, coral bleaching, and unchecked tourism, urging collaborative efforts to document every artifact and sediment layer before it vanishes. Ultimately, the Land of Punt remains both a partner and a phantom, a source of incense that fueled divine rituals, a crossroads of cultures that shaped early globalization, and a vanished kingdom that defies precise mapping. Its story reminds us that trade was more than commerce. It was a conduit for ideas, people, and technologies that connected ancient worlds. And as we sift through sand, dive beneath waves, and decode hieroglyphs, we honor the memory of a civilization whose legacy still perfumed the air of temples and whose echoes call us to search shifting horizons for the lost shores of a vanished realm. Along the winding rivers and mist-shrouded hills of South and Southeast Asia, tales endure of serpent people who once walked the earth in half-human form, guardians of hidden realms and bearers of ancient wisdom. In temple reliefs, from Bagan to Angkor, carved Naga coils frame doorways and dance atop balustrades, echoing legends of a race that bridged land and water before the Great Flood reshaped the world. And even now, folklorists and geneticists alike search the tangled rainforests and cryptic oral chants for traces of the Naga people, wondering whether myth conceals a lost chapter of human prehistory. The concept of a Naga civilization surfaces in the Vedic scriptures of India as semi-divine beings, dwelling beneath rivers and within subterranean palaces, their heads crowned with cobra hoods, and their bodies glistening like polished jade. As Hindu and Buddhist traditions spread eastward, the image of the Naga evolved. In Cambodia's Angkor Wat bas-reliefs, endless Naga serpents coil along causeways. In Myanmar's Bagan temples, stylized Naga heads guard sacred stairways. In Yunnan's mosaic-tiled pagodas, rainbow-scaled dragon serpents prowl. These artistic depictions hint at a shared reverence for a primordial race associated with water, fertility, and esoteric knowledge. Archaeological surveys in northeastern India's Assam and Bangladesh's Sylhet regions reveal megalithic stone circles and carved stele-bearing serpent motifs dating to at least 1500 BCE, suggesting cults venerating Naga deities long before major empires arose. Oral traditions among the Khasis and Garos speak of people of the deep who taught local tribes agriculture, and medicine before retreating to underground cities along fault lines that crisscross the Khasi Hills. Similar legends among the Karen and Mon peoples of Myanmar describe subterranean palaces lit by bioluminescent fungi, staffed by Naga artisans crafting gems that heal wounds and unlock psychic sight. Early British surveyors in the 19th century dismissed these as poetic myth, yet they recorded unexplained cave entrances and stone stairways leading into darkness features now under re-examination by speleologists in the Malay Peninsula. Chinese explorers in medieval dynastic voyages wrote of Naga emblems carved into temple pillars at the mouths of hidden river caves. Local fishermen, avoiding certain tidal pools after dark, believed those waters led to Naga courts where time flowed differently and offerings of rice and betel nut secured safe passage back to the surface. Geochemical analysis of collapsed cave ceilings in central Thailand has uncovered carbon-14 dates clustering around 2000 BCE, implying human activity in karst chambers long thought inaccessible to Neolithic peoples. Textile fragments preserved in silt-filled caverns bear designs resembling Naga scales diamond, lattice of indigo and terracotta dyes, raising questions about the technological sophistication of ancient weaving. Geneticists studying the mitochondrial DNA of hill tribe populations in the Indo-Burmese borderlands have identified haplogroups with deep coalescence times, possibly tracing back to migrations predating the agricultural expansions of the Fertile Crescent. Could these lineages carry echoes of a distinct Naga ethnicity that intertwined with Tibeto-Burman and Austroasiatic peoples millennia ago? Anthropologists note that serpent symbolism appears in Neolithic sites across Eurasia, from the painted cave walls of Catalhoyuk to the stone carvings at Göbekli Tepe, suggesting a universal archetype of serpent guardianship. Whether the Asian Naga myths represent a localized survival of this global motif or a separate cultural phenomenon remains contested. Underwater archaeologists exploring the Mekong Delta have mapped submerged temple platforms and stepped causeways that emerged seasonally during droughts. These structures, adorned with Naga head carvings at every stair, hint at ritual complexes inundated by rising waters in the early centuries CE, possibly tied to monsoon-driven floods or deliberate damming. LiDAR surveys of Bagan's environs reveal earthworks connecting riverine temples in patterns evocative of snake coils, leading researchers to propose that entire sacred landscapes were designed to emulate Naga form, symbolically linking water and worship. In Cambodia, drone mapping over the Kulin Hills uncovers hidden mountain escarpments with Naga-shaped rock formations that local Khmers revere as ancestral seats of the Serpent King sites, where annual offerings of flowers and incense continue, uninterrupted for a millennium. Yet, ethnolinguistic model specialists caution that conflating geological shapes with cultural intent risks overlaying modern interpretation on ancient contexts. They stress cross-disciplinary fieldwork combining cave archaeology, ritual ethnography, and high-precision dating to distinguish deliberate construction from natural topography. Meanwhile, oceanographers investigating the Sunda Shelf have identified paleocanals and submerged sandbanks consistent with river courses active during lower sea level stands of the last glacial maximum. These waterways likely connected continental Southeast Asia to the emergent landmass of Sunland, facilitating human migrations and potentially seafaring that reached the coasts of what are now Indonesia's coral archipelagos. It is plausible that communities akin to Naga myth-bearers occupied these corridors, adapting to environments that later disappeared beneath rising seas. In modern Southeast Asian art, the Naga endures as a symbol of protection. Bridge balustrades, shaped like cobra bodhis, festival dancers wearing multi-headed snake costumes, temple guardians flanked by Naga sculptures. This living legacy underscores the deep resonance of serpent people imagery in regional identity, independent of historical veracity. As cave explorations extend deeper and submersibles probe paleo coastlines, the search for material evidence of a Naga civilization presses onward. But perhaps the true essence of the Naga remains not in buried halls or charred hearths, but in the serpentine currents of cultural memory currents that flow through river valleys, echo in temple hymns, and coil around the human heart's longing for mystery. Thank you for drifting with us beneath the waters of myth and memory, where each legend of a lost civilization invites both wonder and reflection. If these stories stirred your imagination, please like and subscribe to Sleep Workshop and share your own echoes of ancient lore in the comments below. May your dreams carry you through hidden realms as deep and winding as the Naga's silent rivers. Good night and sleep well.